Welcome to BWI Live. We've got a fun show for you today. We are previewing the 2024 high school football season. There's a lot of names that are going to come up over the next month or so, 2 months, 3 months of players that are taking a big step, whether it's their first time on the college football stage with class of 27, ascending players in 26, or some last-ditch efforts to get their names known in 2025 before the early signing period in December. We're going to be previewing the names that we know right now, though. The names that these guys have followed, cataloged, and reported on over the summer at Penn State football training camp and beyond. And of course, those people leading the charge, Ryan Snyder and Sean Fitz, are recruiting insiders for Penn State football recruiting. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Ryan, I've enjoyed your lists, which are going to make up a big part of the show this week, what you've been writing over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So just as we start off the show, tell people what you wrote and where they can go find it.
I got all types of lists. What do you want? We just posted best high school games to watch this season, in-state prospects that we think who could realistically end up at Penn State. We also have a bunch of commits we're eager to watch. So plenty more lists to come. It is list season, ladies and gentlemen. Not just watch list season, not just the Benerick, Davey O'Brien. No, we are making a lot of high school lists right about now because, quite frankly, recruits don't want to talk right now because they're busy with preseason practice. So that's just the reality of the situation. And I don't want to blow them up right now because, hey, I get it. I was tired after 2-a-days too back in the day.
And honestly, Ryan, it's a good time to kind of remind and refresh everybody the names. The information you guys provide at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com is excellent. It's awesome. But sometimes we do need to stop and reflect and go, hey, here's what we learned. And I think you guys do that better than anybody. And Fitz, you are our budding pitch man here. Where can they go read all this stuff?
They can read it at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Of course, you've got the code PSU1. Guys, get in there now. Just do it. I think our camp coverage has spoken for itself for our readers. The feedback has been phenomenal, taking you inside Penn State football. Honestly, the best camp coverage I've ever been a part of. And I know Nate's a huge part of that. Greg, Ryan, T. Frank, everybody contributes. Everybody carries the load, and we come away with that gold medal there. So definitely check that out. But I'm still getting over the mental image of Ryan Snyder coming off the field on 2-a-days and the school newspaper from Central Dauphin coming up and wanting an interview and him going, man, I'm exhausted. I'm sorry. I can't do that. I'm not going to tell you where I'm going. But other than that, yeah, we're moving forward here on a Thursday.
Do they do 2-a-days everywhere nowadays? I don't even know that they do.
I thought they were illegal.
3-a-days, man. We had that special teams practice in the afternoon. Some of us shine there, but that was our favorite. But no, offense in the morning, special teams in the afternoon, defense in the evening. I don't miss it. I'll be honest with you. I miss a lot of things about high school football. I don't miss 3-a-days at all.
No.
I thought that they were like 2-a-days and 3-a-days were banned everywhere, but I guess on the high school level, it's different than the more controlled environments at the college and NFL levels.
Depending on the state, I assume.
Got a busy chat this morning so far to start. Steven says, good morning, Go State. Nothing but hope for 2024. Beat West Virginia. He's in ready and raring for the college football season, which is just a few weeks away. Guys, let's start off with the big news from last week. Fitz and I talked about this. You can check out the video BlueWhiteIllustrated.com or BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and here on the YouTube channel. But Cam Smith joining the Nittany Lions as a flip in the class of 2025. So, Ryan, wanted to get your thoughts, and then we'll kind of recap some of the conversation we had last week. But this situation, what were your thoughts on Smith joining the Nittany Lions?
A player I thought was going to join the Nittany Lions back in February, right? And then Alex Tash commits quickly, and, of course, DJ McClary was already on board, and Penn State had to tap the brakes. I mean, Tom Allen had been here for, 6 weeks at that point? So, I understood why that happened back then, but this was a player who I think always really wanted to be at Penn State, and he made that clear kind of before, back in January, February, before the Duke commitment, and then even after, switching last week, that was a key point that he's stressed really throughout a lot of his recruitment. So good pickup for Penn State. Hey, they got into St. Joseph's Prep, right? Hey, I know fans are always interested in the Prep, St. Francis, some of these other schools dynamic that Penn State struggled with over the years. But good player, good in space. I think that'll be his big thing, moving forward. Obviously, got to grow a little bit at 6 foot, 205, somewhere in that ballpark. But Cam Smith fits Penn State. I think that's the big thing. He's a guy that's always kind of cares about the things that Penn State cares about, right? And here you got another quality linebacker who's still developing a relationship with Tom Allen. But, at the end of the day, this was a school he always really wanted to be at, and Penn State's able to get it over the line.
Fitz, anything interesting that you've thought about with this particular recruitment, or do you just want to kind of chime in here on Cam Smith?
I saw it on the rundown, and I was like, man, wasn't that like a month ago? But
it feels like it, right?
Feels like it. Yeah, it was. I know I didn't do the show last Thursday, so, but we did do the follow up before he committed. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a guy. I don't know how to project. You talk about projecting the box, projecting in space, but I'm not sure how he projects. Except that I think he will fit in either role. Like he plays in the box, but he does play in space. He plays in coverage, so he does some of those good things. Ryan mentioned the size. That's going to be something that obviously, it's going to be different to be 6'205" on the high school field, and then you get to the Big Ten and it changes a lot, so that's going to be something he has to overcome. You see on the video, good off the edge, good in coverage. I mean, there's a lot of things he does very well. I was surprised when they didn't take him the first time around. That was definitely an added wrinkle that we, what was it, Ryan? It was late January. I think he was coming off a visit, and he said he was going to commit. And we're like, well, that's obviously Penn State, and we checked in, and Penn State decided to go in another direction. And like I said on the show before, going with McClary over Smith, was a decision. So I think it worked itself out in the end. Cam Smith, good player. Again, St. Joe's Prep. I talked to somebody this week. They're not doing anything different in St. Joe's Prep. It's just about finding the right guy. And I think Cam Smith's the right guy. They're going to continue to chip away there at some of the 2026. I know Alex Haskell. It's a very good, very big prospect for them on the defensive line, even though he carries a lower ranking right now as a 3-star guy. So continue doing what they're doing. St. Joe's Prep, some of it's been warranted, some of it's been overblown, but you just, I guess, take the most sensational and go with it, I guess. No, Cam Smith, good addition for Penn State in 2025.
Something interesting that I think has come up even on the Tuesday show during the BWI mailbag, and I guess the way I'm thinking about it, I want to get your thoughts on this. Tom Allen said that he wants to recruit guys that can play all 3 linebacker positions, but you and I have had the conversation. There's really just 2. Like, they want to play with a third safety. So playing in space, I guess to me, means more just playing in coverage, not necessarily playing out in the field or playing that Sam linebacker position. Do you see any difference here with these linebacker recruits or prospects, kind of with that in mind of they're all box linebackers for the most part, and they need to be able to do both, or how do you view box linebacker versus space linebacker, if that's the thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it used to be where Penn State was just going to recruit outside linebackers and then eventually move guys into the inside. I don't know if that's the case, especially under Tom Allen. You look at the class of 2024, you got Kari Jackson, you got Anthony Specca. Those guys profile as Mike. So you got kind of a flip on the thought process there. It's tough. I actually read that quote this morning because it made me laugh. Nate got the quote from Tom Allen where he mentioned playing the Michael and playing the Samuel, which is one of the most Tom Allen quotes I've ever seen. No, you've got to be available because you will see 3 linebacker sets. I know this is basically a 4-2-5 right now, but you will see 3 linebacker sets when it's warranted, playing against the Iowas, playing against the teams that are going to, essentially you need to stack the box on. And I know safeties can do that, but having a guy like Dom DeLuca out there, having a guy that can play in space. I know he mentioned Keon Wiley, like the loss of Keon Wiley this year, a big loss. Like he did not play much last year, but a big loss when you're talking about depth and getting into November, and there's going to be injuries there. So I think that's a very interesting aspect. Linebacker, turned down on the knob there in terms of preference. Like in the grand scheme of things, linebacker is one of, I don't want to say this, but linebacker is one of the least important spots when you're trying to make an impact defense. You could still be an impact linebacker, absolutely. But in terms of, you want your defensive ends going after the quarterback, you want your corners to be lockdown corners. This defense, you want your safeties to be everything, So I think it's kind of minimized that. But at the same time, you still need linebackers. I'm fascinated by the linebacker class. You've got 3 completely different dudes there. You've got Alex Tash, who is your basic create a player prototype like linebacker, like 6'2", 225, whatever. You got LeVar Arrington Jr., who might be an edge at the next level. He's got that long, lanky build, and he's got some pop and he's got some spunk off the edge there. And then you've got Cam Smith, who kind of fits into that Sam role where you play in space. So it's just three completely different guys. I don't know what they're going to do with them because there's a lot of development ahead of them, especially with Arrington. So very, very interesting to watch that over the next couple of years.
It's just you said something. I'm not going to get on a big tangent here, but it is interesting when you talk about program development and kind of the philosophy of team building. Linebacker, running back, tight end, three areas where Penn State has been elite in recruiting. Not the three most impactful positions when you're building a football team. Now, they've been great at corner and DN. That's all great, but it's just interesting, kind of looking at some of those areas where Penn State's been good, and I think how it has shaped in recruiting what the team has become over the last couple of years, especially on offense. What can shape your future is My Perfect Franchise. Are you tired of grinding out nickels for somebody else? Going to a job that you feel like you could do better if you just worked for yourself? Well, Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net, he did that. That's what he did. He found his path forward by signing up and buying into a franchise and managing it himself. He's taken almost a decade of experience and he's turned it into myperfectfranchise.net. Call him 404-973-9901 or Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. There is a process. If you want to get into this, if you want to get into franchise ownership where you buy a regional franchise in a larger corporation, he's done it a bunch of times. He understands how to do it, and he will help you with that process. First off, to determine, is this something you should be doing? Is this something that you have the right skills for and you have the financial reserves to actually invest in? And he can find the right company, the right size, the right business model. He talks to us about once a year about all the different things going on in business, and I've got a page of notes that mean nothing to me now. Like, I take the notes, then I come to you, and I'm like, I'm not a business person. I'm a football on-camera guy. So talk to Andy, 404-973-9901. He's even got a business process now where he can put you not just into a franchise, but a small business. He can help you buy a small business in your area. Now, when he talked to us about that, it was like, you got to know what you're buying. It's a little more dangerous buying a small business, especially one that can be a little bit more volatile, but he has the process to do that as well. So whatever you're interested in, I know a lot of people have said, like, T. Frank, we're not going to buy a corporate business. That doesn't fit us. Well, if that doesn't fit you, there's more than one way for you to get into managing your own life. And here's why, guys. You can determine your own future. You can make sure that you are forging a path forward to a better financial future. So appreciate Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Also, we're now joined by Game Time. I'm going this weekend to go see the Steelers and the Bills in the preseason. I'm hoping it doesn't rain. But here's the great thing. I got my tickets on the Game Time app, and it's great because I didn't have to pay a lot of money. Last-second deals for NFL, college, MLB, whatever it is. We're talking about previewing the upcoming season of football. I don't know if they have high school games, but I know they have college and NFL. So if you want to check out Game Time, download the Game Time app, and we got a promo code that I'll get to you here in just a second, but I'm going to show you the Game Time app here, or the website here on screen in just 1 second. They show you the seat view. They show you the concert, where you're going to be, and, of course, the price. The closer you get to the game, the cheaper the tickets get instead of the other way around where you get price gouged. So download the Game Time app. Use our promo code. Create an account and use the promo code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions do apply, so check it out at Game Time, either gametime.co or the Game Time app. Appreciate them for joining us here on the show. The other thing that happened this week, gentlemen, was Penn State lost a commitment from Keandre Barker. Fitz, you have been following Keandre for a while and his recruiting journey and his high school journey. So can you give us a recap of all the things that happened with Keandre Barker? Because it is almost a soap opera. It's so long at this point.
Ooh, okay, deep breath here. Keandre Barker, originally from Arkansas, had a very good sophomore year, committed to Penn State after that sophomore year in the spring of 2023, I guess it was. So he was a very early commitment, and you look back at Penn State's early commitments in the class of 2025, it did not exactly go to plan for that. But Barker transferred to Texas, was not able to play due to transfer rules, got into a couple games at the end of the season, did not work out for him there. He was not returning there for his final season. Excuse me, he missed his junior season. He was not going to return there for his senior season. Was supposed to go to Miami Central with Beckham Kitza. That didn't work out, which is not a big deal. Penn State, I don't think, really preferred him to be down there. The conversation kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. He went back to Arkansas. He popped up on campus at Arkansas, and I will say this: like, that was probably a bit overblown. I know the Arkansas staff like threw the house at him while he was on campus for a team camp, and there was supposed to be an official visit. I think if it's Keandre Barker's choice at that point, he's going to stay in the class. But I think things kind of grew apart. Of course, Penn State had Tyke Hayes. They had Alvin Henderson, then lost Alvin Henderson, whatever. And then took Jabri Wallace Coleman from Imhotep in the last weekend in June. I wrote in late June, this was going to end up a 2 running back class, and Barker was going to be the odd man out. So this was an expected move. Like, we've been waiting for it for a long time. And actually, Ryan the other day was like, I was going to text you this morning to ask about Barker just because I think you wrote the story in late June.
Yeah,
maybe
it was
early
weeks
July,
ago.
like that.
Weeks ago.
So we've seen this one coming. It's a situation. I think we could label this a mutual parting of ways. And Penn State's now back to 2 running backs. He's back in Arkansas. He's playing at a different high school in Arkansas. I'm curious to see where he lands. I know Arkansas was fairly aggressive with him before, but this is not a situation where another team came in and swooped him. This was in the works for a long time. So Barker is now back on the market. I'm really curious to see how he develops. Look great as a sophomore, and then of course you take out an entire junior year, which is probably your most important season as a high school football player. And there's no sense of knowing how that's going to go. So Penn State's now back to 2 running backs. Both are from Pennsylvania, and I think that this is probably the way that you see it end up. It's at National Signing Day. Snyder is always looking for guys, no doubt about it, but 2 seems to be the number in 2025.
This reminds me a little bit of, I think it was the class of 23, where they had like 4 tight end commitments, and eventually they ended up with 2, where guys transferred to different positions within the class, and then some guys decommitted, and just the drama of this running back class has been an ongoing process throughout the last couple of years. Ryan, any thoughts you want to add on this situation?
I'm the most intriguing thing to me about it all isn't necessarily Barker. It's more so what happened to Penn State's early commits in the 2025 class. I mean, Sean kind of hit on there a little bit, but Amari Gaines down to Stanford. Jalen Matthews commits for a little bit, now going to Rutgers. DJ McClaury then flips to Rutgers. Like, a lot of these were more so mutual decisions than maybe the players, outright just saying, I don't want to go to Penn State. But it just kind of speaks to early commitments and how they're still very volatile. And I don't want to overthink it because of how good Penn State's 2026 class is off to a start. But at the same time, they also
scaring people right now.
They also have 3 top 100 players.
They're not dropping Kevin Brown and Troy.
No. Or Messiah Mickens, or Jasir Rogers. Any of those guys, really. I mean, there's just more data, I think, on a lot of the 2026 guys than maybe the early commits in 2025. But it's just an interesting. I haven't seen Matthews, Gaines, Barker, McClaury. Well, they were the first 4 commits, right?
I believe they were the first 4. Yeah.
Maybe there's someone in there, but either way, to have all 4 of those guys not end up in the class is just something we don't see very often. You have a couple of them, but not all 4 of the first 4. So that's the intriguing thing to me on how this class is shaped up. And look, Penn State still has a handful of scholarships to play with. We'll see where things are able to go, if they're able to flip guys or wherever it may be. We're still waiting for Malachi Goodman. I was trying to get in touch with Goodman the other day, by the way. He's just gone silent. Yeah, silent. So there's not much out there, but hey, we'll keep chipping away at it.
So to build off of that, I think we're at a point, and you kind of take the kid gloves off here and say, you've got to be sure of your evaluations, and you've got to continue evaluating. When you get these guys committed, that's not the end of their recruitment. Like, you have to continue. I know other schools are still evaluating, other schools are still pushing. You've got to continue to evaluate. And when you bring the money aspect of it into it, if you're going, and we talked about this with Kobe Howard, if you're going to invest capital in a player, you better be damn sure that that player can play at your university. Some of these guys, they have questions about. They feel safer with taking the in-state guys that might be, who knows how these guys end up in 4 years, but might be the better option. And also they're closer to home. And that's going to bring in the V word that you use, volatility, is just huge in early commitments, early rankings, early offers, all that kind of stuff, because it changes so much. because you're talking 16, 17-year-old kids at this point, and that development track is very, very different. So it's interesting to watch this come to play. I think it's becoming a little bit more cutthroat, and I think it's fine. Like, I mean, that's the game right now. So I'm very curious how this continues. I think that we see, and this is national me talking, not Penn State me talking, but as you get closer to the signing day in December, how is this going to go for some of these guys that are, maybe they've been in the class for a long time at a school. Maybe they, are camp guys and somebody else commits or something like that. I think there's going to be a lot of movement. And I think what we've seen in the past, or at least in the last cycle, was a lot of these guys that are going from programs that are D1 Power 4 programs are landing much lower. Like, it's not a situation of, hey, I'm going to decommit from Penn State and go to Temple or something like that, but like much lower. Like, it's very interesting to watch these evaluations play out, because it is big business, obviously. And when you're investing capital in players, you have to be sure about that's the way that you want to allocate those funds. So it'll be very interesting to watch at the end of the year. I think just looking at the 2025 class, Penn State seems pretty set with its guys, but you can watch that film and you can maybe not take that step that you thought that you were going to take as seniors. And that's going to be interesting. So Barker, I think fits in that category in terms of guys that they're just not completely sold on. So if you're not completely sold on a kid, it's tough to validate using a spot, using money, using all that kind of stuff. So just very interesting lead up to signing day. I think you're going to see a lot of that nationally.
Yeah, and Ryan put this here in the chat. He says the Barker situation is complicated, not being able to stick in the woodlands in Texas. Some of the details signal there could be some issues. But to Fitz's point, the issue was, we didn't see him for a full year during a very important evaluation time. So Barker could still be, the way he was as a sophomore. He was a guy that had kind of explosive, big play potential. You wondered what he could develop into from a speed perspective. And then you don't get any of that information. You get two guys closer to home, and all those decisions that Fitz is talking about all kind of bubble to the surface. So it's a gamble on both sides when you talk about especially this transfer culture that is in college football, and maybe some people trying to move to get NIL. We've seen that in the past, and then that doesn't work out for you. There's a lot of these risks you can take on either side, from as a football player or as a prospect or as a football program, when it comes to recruiting, and especially recruiting early.
And you're more likely to take that chance on a guy that's in your backyard. You're more likely to take that chance on a guy that you think is a top guy. Like it's a sliding scale here. Like it's not the same rules for everyone. And I think him being in Arkansas, Texas, Miami, wherever he's going to be, it's easier to cut that line.
Yeah. Rob has a comment here in the chat. He says linebackers develop into 235, 240, not 250. They're more likely to be 205 to 220 at this point in their development. I think that's a good point. Like, not only are all defensive football players generally smaller than the last 20 years, but linebackers specifically have to be able to cover. And here's a random thought. Kari Jackson's almost 250 on the roster. I did not see that coming from his profile in high school. So there's every once in a while you get a throwback. You get a Kobe King that's 250, but most linebackers are Cam Smith sized, and they are that kind of profile if you want to have the complete skill set of a guy that can play the run but play the pass. And that's why I think that's an interesting and an important point talking about linebackers here in modern college football.
Yeah, and this stems from a comment earlier in the chat where somebody was saying 6'2", 250 can run a 4.4. Well, I mean, there's only a certain amount of guys that are floating around like that.
Yeah, and Patrick Willis is in the Hall of Fame. Congratulations, but how many of them
in Georgia?
Yeah,
but no, I mean it's all about movement. It's all about, it used to be, get downhill, move forward. Now it's, you got to drop. You can, like, if you can't drop, you are irrelevant at this point. And then you got to be able to move laterally. The comparison I made in the chat, like Rudy Gobert is what, 3-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year. He's irrelevant when the playoffs come around because teams can scheme around him because he can't move as well, So it's that thing. It's like you can make that position irrelevant by scheming around it, and that's what offenses have really tried to do as they spread it out.
Ryan, any final thoughts before we get to our next topic here?
Nothing. Hi guys, I just haven't talked for a little while. Nice to chime in. Nothing really to add on the linebacker stuff. I mean, it's pretty pretty simple. I will say, like, Kari Jackson's getting big, but man, I've heard good things about the way he is handling, like a very professional recruit or very professional freshman.
The two of those freshman linebackers, they both have that. Like that's what you keep hearing on them is like their approach is really good, really good.
Yeah.
Anthony Specca being the other one, so you don't have to look it up if you're listening.
Ryan, you are up because the second half of our show, we're going to be leaning on the articles you wrote at bluewhiteillustrated.com. So I like this one. I love it, actually. And we're going to get into the players that you guys are watching in 2024. So, Ryan, I believe that this was, the way you phrased this was committed players in the class of 2025 that you're interested to watch in this upcoming football season. So we'll start there, and obviously if you want to read the full thing, I'm going to throw this up here again. Go to bluewhiteillustrated.com. Because you love us here and you're watching the show, use promo code PSU1, 2 months for $1. You can get all the names he's talking about. We're not going to get to them all here because we don't have all that kind of time, and because we want you to go read it at bluewhiteillustrated.com. So who are some of the names that you put on your list that you find most interesting that you want to share here on the show?
Yeah, I think so. I wrote yesterday that I don't think I've ever done a story like this where I lead it off with an offensive lineman, right? Because, we're talking about guys I want to see splash plays, I want to see playmakers, all that kind of stuff. But Owen Alasini has to be mentioned. And there's a variety of reasons for it. I feel like athletically at 6'8", 260, he's one of the most athletic tackles that Penn State has brought in. And they brought in some really good ones over the years. Obviously, Javon Williams, everybody knows what he was able to do from a shot put perspective and from a size perspective. Different things there that really like. Obviously, Donko. You got Egan Boyer in there. Garrett Sexton was a guy we talked about a ton last year. Went from a quarterback to an offensive tackle. Showed some flashy numbers. But I think Alasini is on not a different level, but just a very, very high level when it comes to athletic testing and some of the things he's able to do at his size. So that you take that into account, and then you add in the fact that this is only his third year playing football. This was a guy who was playing hockey, which, by the way, I would have loved to have seen Owen Alasini playing hockey in ninth grade. Yeah, that would have been fun to watch. So.
You guys did see that Penn State got a 7-foot hockey commit, right?
I did, yeah.
And the videos are fantastic. Like it hasn't gotten enough attention. I mean, maybe it has in the correct circles, but it's been funny to watch.
Hopefully that was when I was at the beach, because I feel bad as I have no idea what you're talking about. But I don't pay attention to the hockey recruiting all that much. Maybe I should. We'll see where that goes. But just again, a guy who's only been playing for 3 years now. So has a lot to learn from a technique perspective. And then you add in those testing numbers that have really popped. I mean, that was his testing numbers. Like, it's not like Zion Ellie testing numbers and stuff because he's a little younger and all that, but like it was one of the top 3 or 4 guys, in my opinion at least, that really splashed this year. This year, Rogers was another one. When you look at the size and you look at the numbers they put up, this is really, really impressive. So I just think when you add in the fact that he has a lot to learn still, only his third year of playing football, we could really see him take another step. And On3 has him rated substantially higher than all these other sites. And I think if he's able to show that on film, maybe just how athletic he is, that could really boost him in the industry rankings long term. So fun guy to watch. He's got a heck of a matchup to start of season 2. Those New England schools don't start until mid-September, but they're playing the Hun school September 14th. Luke Waffle, we know, is one of Penn State's top edge rushers. So really hoping we get to see those two go at it off the edge.
I love watching the development of recruiting processes too, because every once in a while, like, it's not a 100% thing, but you look at the frames that Penn State has gotten. They've gotten some pure tackles over the years. 6'8", 6'7", getting Nolan Rucci in the transfer portal, who's 6'8", Owen Alasini, who's super tall. Like, they've got these guys that have the length and the frame and the athleticism to be complete players at the next level. And it is, that process of, do they develop into that? Because I know, even in the last class, I was very high on Garrett Sexton. I know he had a very high ranking, but Egan Boyer, athletic, physical, and putting the weight on. And like, these are guys that have, these development curves. This is kind of like the prototype of what Penn State's looking for. Fitz, do you have a guy you want to throw here up for everybody to talk about?
I do. I would also like to pound my chest on Egan Boyer because it sounds like he might be a good one. I'm going to stay on the offensive line. And I was sitting there at Lash Bash taking photos as guys arrived. I'm like, who is this grown man walking with all these guys in green? and it ended up being Michael Troutman. And I haven't seen Michael Troutman in person since camp last year. And he looks different. And I'm very curious to see this. Penn State broke its mold in terms of, you mentioned recruiting huge on the offensive line, really, really big guys. And that includes the interior guys. Troutman's just a hair over 6'2", 6'2 and a half, 290. Great football player. Like, that's the thing I keep going back to. Great football player. And he's probably a center at the next level. Kind of reminds me of Sal Wormley in a sense, like his center guard type thing. There you see the picture. He's put together. And I'm very curious to see how his senior season goes. I don't think he has the size to really, change much in terms of rankings, but like, I think he's going to have a good year for DePaul. And I think he's going to put up some of the better tape that you're going to see among the offensive linemen. Where he is on terms of the growth curve and the progress that he's going to be able to make in the long run, still up for debate. But this is a guy that we don't talk about much just because, his size, I think, and the relative, lack of publication of his publicizing of his recruitment. So I'm very interested to watch him just because I think he's just a great football player. And that, like I said, the size is going to hurt his star ranking, but like, you need those guys on your roster, and I'm excited to see him play.
Ryan, we're going to probably do two apiece here. So who's the next guy that you want to highlight as far as players you're interested in watching this upcoming season?
There's a ton. I mean, just to clarify, I put Messiah Mickens and Kevin Brown in that story too. So we did say earlier 2025 guys. I did throw the Harrisburg duo in there. I know the Homer in me, the 717 in me. Obviously, I'm going to watch those guys a ton this year, and I'm really excited to watch Messiah Mickens run behind Kevin Brown. That's gonna be. I'm probably going to see them play more than anybody, let's be honest. So, but let's go back to 2025 quick for the purpose of this podcast, and I'll go with Kobe Howard. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, we got some athletic testing numbers on him following camp, and they're all solid. I think, is he a burner? No. Is there any one area that really pops with him? No. But all of his numbers are pretty. Not even all of his numbers. I would say all of his traits. Even the way he runs routes and all that stuff. Like, it's all above average to good, and I think that makes him a little more versatile than maybe I kind of thought originally. But then you add in a couple things. One, he broke his tibia and fibula. Is that what it is? Fibula, or something like that. Either way, those two big bones in your leg as a sophomore. So you get no off season really last year. That was quite a long recovery for him. He has a good junior season down at Western, and now. Which Western's a good school in the area. It's not like a powerhouse or anything. But now he transfers to Chaminade Madonna, who we know is a powerhouse, who we know is going to be playing elite programs all year long. They start with a game on ESPN against St. John Bosco. So we have a guy who has a full off season to recover now, to get better, all those kind of things that he didn't have last year. Oh, and by the way, now he's playing against star-studded teams all around South Florida and even some national ones. So just kind of seeing how he's able to play in that spotlight, I think will really kind of bode well to, is this a guy we still have a little underrated, or is this a player who, definitely can be used in a variety of ways at Penn State? So Kobe Howard's pretty high on the list, but man, I could go all day. Lyric Samuel, I'm so excited to watch Lyric Samuel this year. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of guys that I could throw in there.
Fitz, your thoughts on Kobe Howard? I know we've kind of beaten this one to death talking about receivers in 2025, but I guess what do you want to see from him? Ryan saying, like, kind of giving the backstory. What do you want to see from him to kind of solidify that decision that Penn State made in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, you want to see production, which he's always been a productive guy. But, I mean, he's taken a big step up in terms of where he's going to play. And this is a spotlight school in South Florida. This is going to be one of, if not the main focus for a lot of people in South Florida because of the talent that they put out. And, is he going to be able to make that step and, take that next step to where he needs to be? Again, like that's his game. That production is his game. Caught a lot of passes, caught a lot of touchdowns and things like that. The questions that we have athletically, kind of go away in this situation. So I'm very curious to see how he develops, because he's going to have ESPN games. He's going to have, spotlight games against great competition. Yeah. So we'll see how he responds.
Chaminade goes deep in the playoffs every year too, so he's going to be playing well into December. We're going to get a lot of film on him.
So Brad says the thing that I think every single time you guys talk about.
Oh, I know. I screw it up. I know.
No. I don't think you do. It's just the most fun name to say. Chaminade Madonna. It just rolls off.
Is that
the
it
tongue.
actually, Brad? I don't know. Am I butchering it?
Yeah.
I might be
Shaman
butchering it.
Madonna. Yeah.
Okay.
Shamana Madonna. We could say it all
I'm just
day.
happy I
and
got
would just be
Alicini
happy.
right. Because normally I see Alicine. I'm just happy I got Alicini right, honestly.
Hey, speaking of fun things, Ryan, you couldn't get a hold of Malachi Goodman. I couldn't get a hold of Malachi Goodman. Chad Simmons from On3 got a hold of Malachi Goodman. There's an update on the site right now, so check it out.
That's why he's the best, man.
Like clockwork.
Him and Steve crush it. I don't know. I'm a peasant compared to him and Will Fong. I don't know. These kids, they're way more interested in talking to those guys than me. But hey, thanks, Chad. Appreciate it.
When your recruiting gets to a certain level, and everybody's like, you and I are hitting him up from this site, and we got other Penn State sites, you got other Auburn sites, you got other USC sites, you got Alabama, whatever. They just want to talk to the national guys at this point because they know, that's kind of how the game works. So
it gets to everybody at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hammer this home. You want that Malachi Goodman update? Go to bluewoodillustrated.com, code PSU1, 2 months for $1. Okay, Fitz, you have one more that you want to talk about, right?
I got one more, and it's a pretty important one. Beckham kitza. What do we?
Sorry.
Yeah, I did the Keandre Barker retrospect here earlier, but I'm not going to do the Kritza one. But he's back at Miami Central, and we're going to see what he's made of. It's a tough place to get in and get into a groove. I know they are in camp, but yeah, I mean he's got to show it on the field. He did it in Colorado. He didn't do it in California. Didn't do it in Florida last year. Went back to Colorado. Did it in Colorado. And I told myself I wasn't going to do this, but now he's back in Florida, and hey. The talent is there. You can see it. I sat there and watched his workout in June with Danny O'Brien, and boy, he can throw the football. But there's everything else. Everything else. So very curious to see how that one goes. I don't think we need to get too deep into it because I don't think there's a lot of depth to be here. Like he's got to be able to run the offense. He's got to be able to make the throws. He's got to be able to throw off platform and not
be consistent.
Be consistent and not fall into those bad habits, which he certainly showed at times last year. Like you can get away with that playing around Boulder, Colorado. I don't think you're gonna get away with that in South Florida. So very curious to see how he goes. Again, ceiling way high.
Yep.
But he's not close to his ceiling. So we're gonna see where that goes about. I mean, he's a guy that's a couple years of a project in college, and it's gonna be interesting to see where he's playing at this level.
Yeah, I've
go
ahead, Ryan.
I was going to just say also with Kritza, like we know the talent down there is awesome. He has 4 games against like top 300 defensive backs too that are going to challenge him. And obviously he's got talent around him at wide receiver, but and one of those guys, by the way, that's not top 300 is Antonio Branch too, who's going to play safety at Penn State down the road. But I mean, Ben Hanks is a heck of a player. Keon Young, heck of a player. Gregory Thomas is one of the top prospects in the entire country. Like he's going to be facing some defensive backs that he has never seen before, and that could be good or bad. That's what I'm really interested in. That's why I included him in this article. Like this step up in talent, again, he's got a talent around him now too, which is fun. But if he's able to thread up some of these defensive backs, and really produce some numbers, that's going to give people a reason to maybe think again about where he's rated.
So
it's a high pressure situation because it's there's a lot of people watching him right now. Like he's a I would say his profile like is a bit expanded from what he is as a prospect. I mean, he's been on the radar for a long time, and also on top of that, he cost Ryan and I a trip to Boulder. So,
but I'll take a trip to Miami. I'm just saying, if we're in.
Maybe not in September. Maybe wait until like October, November.
Playoff game.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sure we'll get right on that.
So I just want to put up his kind of profile here on the YouTube show for those watching on YouTube, but I'm going to kind of talk through some of these things that these guys are mentioning. But I think with Beckham Kritza, to get into some of these details, it is important to know why he's as polarizing as he is, or why there's so much attention on him as there is. 6'5", 185. When he committed to Penn State, I think he was 10 pounds lighter. He looked like a basketball player that or a long distance runner. Like he didn't necessarily look like a football player, but with that size and the velocity that the ball comes off of his hand, he has a lightning quick release, and he's 6'5". So when you have the movement skills, the foot quickness to be an RPO, read option athlete, and I'm not saying that he's a runner necessarily, but I'm saying Andy Kolnicki's talked about like your positional athleticism to be able to flip your hips and throw the football consistently in the RPO game, or to run a read option correctly and then get to another chained movement. He's got all of that potential. So as far as Fitz is talking about the ceiling, it's all there. Arm talent, all that stuff. He also, last year, and I'm with you guys because I want to see some clean film from him. I didn't realize this at the time. When he transferred back to Colorado, it was during the season. So he was at Miami Central and had to transfer back, I think, either after the first game or like right around the first game. So he was playing in that offense, not knowing that offense. And you could see it on the film.
Yes and no. He did play there before, but it's more so he didn't have a preseason to prep with those guys.
But that's what I mean. Like,
yeah.
It functionally, he might as well not have been in that offense before because the way he operated it, watching him on film and watching some of those full games, he didn't know where the reads were necessarily, where he was going through the film and everything was off schedule. A lot of his big plays were off schedule or they were kind of like one read screenplays. I want to see that talent develop, as you mentioned, throw the ball down the field aggressively against good defensive backs and beat them with that velocity and pace on the football. That's going to be the challenge for him, is not to just have this talent you guys are talking about, but put it on display in a better situation than I think he's had so far in his college career or his high school career. So just kind of wanted to put a fine point on the Beckham Kitza conversation.
And to add another point, he's worked his ass off. Like he's really, really worked hard. Like it's one of those things. He's not putting it all on video and putting clips out on Twitter and Instagram. Like he has worked hard. He came up and worked with Danny O'Brien, I think 3 times this summer. Like he's putting in the work that he needs to. It's just a matter of, he's got a long way to go. Like that's I think that's commendable. So I think it's worth saying as well. And he's been one of Penn State's best recruiters as well.
Last thing, like we were talking about why is Beckham Kitza so polarizing, and this is unfair to him, but Matt Zollers is also a major reason why. And taking him when they did, whether it's fair or not, probably didn't have a massive impact. Maybe it did. I don't know. But, that grabbed everyone's attention. Matt Zollers ends up elsewhere. Penn State fans get all upset about it. Like we just need to mention, like, why is that a big case? Matt Zollers, which is totally unfair to Beckham, is a massive reason why.
Well,
I also think
Malik Washington.
That's what I was going to say.
Ryan Montgomery. I mean, Ryan Montgomery wasn't coming here, but like you see those guys with the stars beside their names, and you kind of wonder why you would jump head first. And it's probably not a conversation for August of the year after he committed, but like it is unfair to him. But you can I think you can still question it. I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. And just to round it all the way back to what Fitz said originally, he has as much talent as other guys, in
arm
terms
talent,
of potential.
for sure.
Arm talent and physical potential. He has some of those characteristics. So Penn State didn't take a shot in the dark. It's just whether or not this is going to pay off. And Kitza, as Fitz mentioned, is putting in the work to make sure that happens. Let's get on to our last topic for the show today, which is kind of the same thing, but also different. It's which one of these non-committed players fits best in the class of 26, and maybe even beyond. So, Ryan, again, you put together a list of Pennsylvania prospects specifically that fit in the class of 2026 to build on this impressive start to the next class. So, who are the names that you find most interesting in this conversation that you want to talk about here on the show?
So what was funny about this, Sean and I were working on, finding names one day, and then we ended up just landing on a ton of Pennsylvania guys. We're like, well, we might as well just make it an in-state kind of story because the vast majority of the names we kind of put together there were in-state guys. But I'm going to start with a guy that I don't think is talked about nearly as much compared to some of these other ones, and that's because he just kind of recently is emerging onto the radar, and that's offensive lineman Tavion Branch, who I know, T. Frank, you really were excited about the first time you saw him. Guy who camps at Penn State 3 times, progressively gets better every single time. Pretty good athletic numbers, too. I think that was something that Penn State wasn't sure about originally, and then when he consistently comes to these camps and consistently puts in the same numbers all the time, which by the way, also is really taking to the coaching that he gets from Troutwine, that made it an offer that Penn State had to hand out. And, for a guy, we talk all the time about, junior seasons and film and how much that's going to impact things. That'll be the case for Tavion, just like it is for so many of these guys. Yep. But I also do believe that he made a strong enough impression on them already that if he wanted to call up tomorrow, I think Penn State would have to seriously consider taking him. So, guy's really on the rise right now. Good kid who grew up a Penn State fan, and I think it makes a lot of sense that he would end up in this class. Again, Let's see how he does over at Riverside. It's not a big program or anything like that up by it's at Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, I believe. But from a camp perspective, really impressed. And you take coachability when you take the coaching 3 times in a row, and you really kind of show that progression every time you come back over a span of 8 weeks or so. That's what has, I think, Phil Trotwine and others excited.
There's no one size and body type that they recruit. As we talked about, Michael Troutman a little bit smaller, some of these big offensive linemen with big frames that are smaller, and then Tavion Branch, I think, was born gigantic. Like, he's 300 pounds already, 6'3.5", obviously an interior player. Fitz, just from your observations, what do you think of Branch, and what do you think of the fit with what they already have in the class?
I think he reminds me of one of those guys that, we talk about after he commits and was like, oh, all the signs were there that he wanted to be at Penn State. So I think, and as a prospect, he's shown it at camp. I think he came to a camp, like a team camp that his team wasn't even at. Like, he came up to work with Phil Trotwine. So, and usually when those actions are there, it says a lot. So very curious to see how this one plays out. But if everything goes on that same plane that we think it's going to go now, I think that's very likely a member of that class of 2026.
And he's been to camp a ton, too. He camped as a freshman and a sophomore. He's been camped like 5 times now. Literally, he gave me a quote the other day. It was like, I came up there as a freshman, really enjoyed the camp, and told myself I'm going to get a scholarship from this place before I graduate. And I love the confidence. I love the consistency and coming in and proving yourself to get better, because let's be honest, that does not happen often nowadays. I feel like that's going downhill as far as guys who are that committed to camping. Go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say, he came to a camp, didn't get an offer, and then wasn't offended to the point where he didn't consider them?
I knew we were going with that one.
All right. Yes. Moving on in state. Who do we got, Ryan?
Who do you want? I don't know. You can pick anyone you want.
While you were gone, I sort of ranked them just kind of off the cuff, just looking at it. And there's some sleepers in there. There's some risers. There's some guys that maybe aren't as high as we have ranked right now. I like Alex Haskell a lot. St. Joe's Prep defensive tackle. I think he is one of Penn State's higher targets on the defensive line right now. About 6'4", 240, 245 right now. And he's a bit of a wrecking ball. I mean, I know a lot of people have looked at Maxwell Roy and said that's the guy in there. But I think if you look at some of the film, I mean, Haskell, considering he's a year younger than those 2025 guys, he's a heck of a player. So I think that's a guy that I look to. I've got him just outside my top 5 in Pennsylvania. Like, it doesn't reflect that now, but like, I think he's a guy that ends up a 4-star player. So Haskell was up for the Lash Bash in July. He came up to camp, for all the chatter around St. Joe's Prep. He's kept coming back to Penn State. So I think that's a good sign. And I think it's interesting to watch what he's looking. What's that?
I was going to ask, does he play D end or D tackle for St. Joe's Prep? Because I know, like, watching him and seeing him at Penn State camp, he was a D end early, but it looks like, he fits the mold perfectly. Long, big, going to grow into his body, 6'4", Penn State D tackle.
That's a defensive tackle neck right there. He'll be 300 pounds at some point. But no, I think he plays a little bit of both, but I think more on the interior. Depends what they're doing on defense. It's tough. Like, we said this about Cam Smith too. It's tough to evaluate the St. Joe's Prep defense because they're just so much better than everybody they play. Like, maybe not everybody, because they do play a really good schedule, but like when they get into Pennsylvania, it's tough to take that because they're just dominating guys. And Haskell was very good against IMG last year. He had I believe a strip sack, a couple tackles for loss, which as a sophomore is pretty darn good. So really excited to see his progress. And I think he probably ends up higher than all those 2025 guys in that class. It's probably crazy to say right now, but like I think he's that good.
Yeah, and he's a guy who like hasn't done a lot of camps and stuff like that. So like I feel like when you look at 1-3's radar right now, an 87, 15th in the state. I think he's just a guy that, when you're putting together these early rankings lists, it's a lot easier to lean on that data that you're getting from Under Armour camps and Elite 11s and all these other situations, where he's a guy that I have no doubt in my mind should be higher than 15th in the state of Pennsylvania right now. So Penn State knows that. I mean, he may be again, I do this all the time, and Sean's like, why are we doing this right now? But like, he may be their top defensive tackle target in this class, at least at the moment. There's a couple other guys. I think Cam Brickle's up there and a few others, but he is very, very high on the list. And for the record, last year when I saw him play in the state championship game, he primarily played outside, but there's plenty of film of him playing inside too. So I think you're right, Sean. He just kind of bounces back between the two, and 245 already, 2 years to go. Yeah, I mean, I do kind of feel like he's more of an interior guy long term.
I talked to Amin Vanover about playing D end, having played D tackle early in his career and being an undersized guy and understanding where blocks are coming from and how to take on double teams and how to react to things. It's invaluable if you're going to be a D end or a D tackle to have that flexibility to understand how to rush from the outside or defend the run from the inside. Like, those are some valuable skills. If you're a D end and you understand how to pass rush and you get a one-on-one with a guard, that's super valuable that you have that training. I understand it's high school and it's not the next level of terms of technicality, but just those reps. We see guys who come in that have that kind of exposure to good football. They tend to do well at some point in their career. Fitz, I had phrased it to talk about guys in the region maybe, but if you want to just go down the list of guys in PA, because I know it's a strong class. So wherever you want to go with this.
Yeah, I got to get out of here by 11. But a guy that I'm looking at here, Jackson Ford at Malvern Prep, came to camp, earned an offer at camp, really good numbers. And then all of a sudden he blows up. Michigan offers. He's got some other offers in there. I actually had him above Cam Brickle. Brickle's an interesting one because you don't know what's there. He looked really good as a freshman, and then he did the T.A. Cunningham thing. He went to Santa Margarita in California, didn't play much, got hurt a little bit, and then now he's back at Malvern Prep, which I think is probably the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. But I'm very curious to see where he's at. But Ford, there's a lot to like there. He's a really athletic kid, and you look at I put together a top 12 in Pennsylvania, and 4 of them are defensive linemen. That's a very important cycle for Deion Barnes as he tries to replenish those numbers. So, and it's good to start at home and see if you can see what you can do there. So, very interesting kind of sleeper. Like, we're in 2026 and we're talking sleepers, which is just insanely stupid on my part. Like, I'm aware of the hypocritical nature of it, but Jackson Ford is a guy wasn't really on the radar coming into the summer. And now all of a sudden he's pretty squarely there.
Do you want to round us out? I think, Ryan, you got 2. Fitz, you have another one you want to talk about here to end the show?
Sure.
Talk all day, yeah.
YD Collier is another one for me. Came to camp, busted up camp. Just was really athletic, super athletic for a guy that's going to project as an edge that we have rated as a wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver, but he's got high top level ceiling as an athlete. Now, he's a long way to go as an edge rusher because he doesn't play the position very much. But you look at what he's able to do as an athlete, and Penn State has pulled some of those freaky defensive ends before, and he's kind of fits in that mold.
All right. That's what we have on the rundown for the show today. Ryan, any final thoughts of what you're looking forward to coming up with recruiting or with the season? What are you working on?
Trying to see, this is what stinks right now is last year at this time we had a big West Virginia game that's going to start off the season, and you look at Penn State's schedule, there's not really many big games that are going to get big time prospects here anytime soon. So it's just kind of focusing on the high school season for me, and kind of looking at different games I want to attend, and games that I think fans should be looking at. We just put that up on the site a little bit ago, so check that out if you want. But it's kind of a slow couple weeks here. I don't know how else to phrase it other than looking forward to watching some high school football here soon.
Tune in next week for sure.
Yeah.
Go read some James quotes on opening the season on the road. I'm sure you can work something out of there. You and him are the two that are just that are the most offended by Penn State opening on the road often.
It's a lot more fun when we have a big home game and I can start building lists and, this kid's coming, all that kind of stuff where, I sent out, I don't know, last night I probably sent out 30, 40 messages to guys like, hey, any chance you come to Bowling Green or Kent State? And they're like, no, I'm probably not. They're like, can't wait for Ohio State though. I'm like, yeah, I know. We'll catch up on that later.
We've heard that
anyway.
One before, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, as Ryan said, a little bit of a sleepier time in recruiting, but it is definitely not at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for Penn State football training camp coverage. Fitz has been on it. Nate has been on it in terms of getting all the details you want, especially with some of these big landmark situations of scrimmages and things where we get a lot of information, and we're rounding the corner now into season prep. So be on the lookout for all the reporting from Fitz and from Nate and from everybody over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for all the great stuff they do. That'll do it for today. We'll be back next week with more Penn State football talk. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Ryan Snyder, Sean Fitz. We'll talk to you then.